DDM 2022.06 sees the introduction of the new enhanced preview pane that you can see in the bottom half of the window here. Okay. Now this preview pane can be viewed in the horizontal, or using these controls can also be viewed in the vertical. So let's take a look at some information. If I use my category browser, I'm going to search for a part. It's a manufactured part, mechanical, looking for a bearing housing, and I'm looking for my standard bearing housings. I'm going to pick on this particular part here. We can see the preview, and as you can see now, we can see all of the embedded properties that are related to that part. Previously in DDM, you would have to open the properties dialog to get access to all of this information. So all of these tabs are now included in the new enhanced preview pane. There are a couple of extra tabs here that I've added as custom tabs, but essentially all of the previous tabs are included. Now my preference is I typically show this in the horizontal plane like this, and as we can see, we've got the general properties, we have any custom properties that you might have added, the file versions, any attachments. In this case we've got a step file attachment to this model. We can see the structure, therefore we can see that this has a drawing and a document related to it. Okay, let me just move the icons here, or the columns should I say, and we can choose columns in here just like we can in the main window. We also have the option of saving anything we're looking at in this window to a CSV file or an Excel file. We can tree in and do all the usual typical structure browsing here as well. So very useful and really good to get a visual understanding of everything that is related to the item that you've got selected in the top window. If I do a where used, we can see that this particular part is used in a number of different web folders, and we can see there's no comments against it. The audit trail. The audit trail is now a combined audit trail on a single window, and you can filter the information that you want to look at. So if we're only interested in seeing the status change, for example, we can see that here it went to checked and approved, it then got released. It then went to under review and then got re-released. So we can see when it happened, what happened, the details, who did it, why they did it, etc. So very useful. In the case of a drawing, if I look at a drawing here, we now see the embedded PDF of that drawing. So we're looking not at a JPEG image now, we have the option of seeing the actual PDF drawing itself. Okay, which is very useful and much more useful than a PDF. You can see I've got some of our enhanced text-based watermarking here as well. Okay, so there's an example of a drawing. I'm going to look for something else now. I've got some, if I go for purchased items, I've got some examples here of a Creo family table, for example. Now I've got this oil filter, and if something has a family table for Creo or a set of configurations for SolidWorks, we have a new tab called Family Table. So I can see that this is a generic and these are the instances of that generic. If I was to look at this, I can look at the generic, so I'm seeing within the generics the item that I've selected in the top window. Again, very useful for seeing all of the related information in the database. Let's have a quick look at a configuration. If I look at this shaft, for example, this shaft has 3 different configurations available in. They're all obsolete, which is irrelevant really. The roller bearing, there's 2 different roller bearings here. So you get the idea. Very useful and very visual without having to open the properties as you did before. Now there are certain aspects of this that are functional. So predominantly at this point it's read-only, but we are continuing to add functionality into these windows. Okay, if I go back to my standard part here and I look at this document, Again, I've got a PDF of the document here because I've got auto PDF creation facilities on my server. Okay, but I might want to put a comment against this and say, please review from Joe, and I can send that comment to one of the other users in the system, Hercule Poirot, the inspector, and I can add these comments. So there's lots of read-write capabilities in this preview pane as well. Let's look at the example of an assembly. If I look at a bearing housing assembly here, and I pick on, doesn't really matter, this assembly here, we also see the bill of materials in this window. Let me move that over so I can view the bill of materials. Now that this is not an edit capable window at this point in time, but we do plan on enhancing that in the future. But again, much more visual and readily available without having to open a bill of materials. Now, one of the other characteristics about this preview pane is if I've selected bill of materials, if I jump to a different assembly, it will stay on that tab. So I'm now seeing the bill of materials for the item that I've just selected. Likewise, as I move around different assemblies, I'm seeing the associated bill of materials. If I'm looking at individual parts, I might be looking at this part and the where used, and I can see the where used. So as I step down through all the various different parts here, it's doing a where used. So very useful and very quick. Okay, let's look at an example of a folder. If I look at an open change order, for example, I can see a change order here, and I can look at the structure of the change order, so I can see any of the items that are associated with that change order. So I've got a document in here that went from issue 1 to issue 2. I can see the impact assessment information, any of the change introduction tasks, etc. I could look at the workflow. So I can see the workflow process for this. Let's say for argument's sake, or just for demonstration's sake, I want to move backwards in the workflow. I don't have permission because I don't own this folder. Okay, I'm going to assign this to myself. Okay, so as a member of this team, I'm going to assign it to myself. Okay, and therefore I should be in a position where I can transition this through the workflow without having to open the folder itself. I've got a password prompt on this particular step, so I can action the workflow. It's also interactive. I can see the step instructions, so a lot of the things that you're familiar with but normally embedded within the folder properties. Okay, again, audit trail, it's consolidated and with filters available in it. You can also, if I'm working on a folder type, in this case it's a change order, I could start to create some of my tasks within here. You know, update current product brochure. Okay, so I can create a task. I can edit that task. I could say, well, okay, we need this completing by a certain date, let's say by Friday, and I can then assign that task to maybe the marketing department, to Alan Hargreaves. Hi, please can you action this? And I've done all of that without having to open the folder. So the introduction of an enhanced preview pane capability within DDM 2022.06.